Hey, this is Anthony, one of the creators of Sequin, and today I'm going to show you how Sequin makes it easy to stream data out of your Postgres database. I'm going to show you how it works. Now, what do I mean by streaming? Postgres is great for data at rest, but there's two use cases that come up all the time that are more streaming use cases. One of them is replication. You want to take a row from Postgres and you want to copy it to a downstream service or application or front-end client. And then as that changes, you want to make sure to copy the most recent version in real time to downstream services. And the second are event-driven workflows. So be able to react to changes, inserts, updates, or deletes in your Postgres database. And Postgres has some really basic tools for this, but they don't really give you a lot of great guarantees. So teams often will then go and adopt a brand new message bus infrastructure, streaming infrastructure like Kafka, and then copy the data from Postgres into Kafka. And it's very operationally complex. And a lot of these streaming tools just don't have very good ergonomics. So we built Sequin because Postgres has great ergonomics, and we realized we could add some features on top of Postgres and give it the streaming capabilities that we were looking for. So Sequin has two primary components. That first component is taking tables, which are highly concurrent, all these transactions are happening to write things in all sorts of different orders, and produce an ordered stream, or what we call a sequence. And the second component is all of the different options that we give you to consume from your tables via this sequence in order to power these replication or event-driven workflows. So in this video, I'm going to connect my database to Sequin. I'm going to create a sequence. I'll show you how to create a consume endpoint and what webhook subscriptions look like, which are two of the options for consuming rows from Sequin. And then I'll set up a WAL pipeline and show you how that lets you capture every discrete change that happens in a table and capture that in a Sequin and then stream it with Sequin. Let's get started. This is the Sequin dashboard. I'll go ahead and connect a database here. And I can select to use local host. And if I do that, you'll see here the host and port are managed by Sequin. I just need to tell it what local database name to use, as well as the password of that local database, which is just Postgres because it's a local database. And now it's giving me instructions on how to use the Sequin CLI to create a tunnel so the cloud can connect to my local database. So let's go down here. Also tells me how to set up a replication slot. Sequin uses replication slots as part of its mechanism for streaming new row inserts and updates in real time. I've already got that set up, so I don't have to worry about that. I'll just go with this default name, Icy Shadow. So I'll copy this over to my terminal here. And my local port will just be 5432. Great. So now I've got a tunnel with Sequin Cloud, and if I hit connect, it'll connect to this local database, do some validation. And you can see here it's currently measuring latency between the cloud and my local database. Looks like everything's healthy. So with my database connected, I can now create my first sequence and stream a table with that sequence. So I have some test tables in this database. I have orders and products. They both are Dune Universe inspired. Let's go ahead and stream the orders table first. Create your first sequence. We'll select orders, and my video is in the way here, but we can see select column here to sort. So it's a good idea to pick a sort column that like updated at that is updated whenever a row is updated in your database. So I'm going to go ahead and just select that here, which I have updated at. Can't quite see it. There it is. And hit create sequence. Okay. So now with that sequence created, I can now stream this table using a consume endpoint or a webhook subscription. And this sequence is what's going to guarantee that I'm not going to miss anything, that everything will be strictly ordered. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the consume endpoint. So I click create endpoint here, and you'll see the sequence is right here in this list. And I can add filters uh, for the different attributes on my table to ensure that this consume endpoint or this consumer group only processes a subset of the records in this table. And so I won't do that right now, but you can see the different columns here from that table. And then Sequin asked me, where should the consumer group start? So we can have this consumer group start at the beginning of the table, in which case I will process the full backlog of orders. We can have it start at the end of the table, so only process orders from now on, or we can have it start at a specific position, right? And so I can, for example, come over here, and I think they'll have the same updated X. I just created all these as test data, but I could select one of these, for example, and fill it in here and sort of tell Sequin I want to start at that specific position. For now, we'll just do it at the beginning of the table, but obviously being able to, you can set consumer groups to start at any point of the table. You can rewind them. So very similar to a streaming solution like Kafka and Kafka's offsets. So we'll call this just orders pull consumer. That looks just fine. And importantly, for the consume endpoint, for webhook subscriptions, Sequin has guarantees around exactly once processing. And so if you've used a message queue like SQS, it sort of behaves like that, where when I pull from this endpoint, my worker, the entity that pulled, will have 30 seconds, in this case, configurable, to process the messages that I received, the rows that I received. And if I don't act them within that 30-second window, then they'll be made available again to other workers. That's going to let me consume from this endpoint across many workers and not have to worry about coordinating between them or having a mutex or anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and create this consumer. And so Sequin has given me this new endpoint, and I have this curl request right here that I can just copy and paste into my terminal to show you guys what this looks like. I'm going to go ahead and just pipe this into JQ. And by default, it's going to give me batch size of 1. And so we can see I've received a record for Paul Atreides. That's the first record in my database. And if I pull it again, I'm going to receive Lady Jessica. That's because Paul is currently not visible. It's checked out because I never acted. And of course, I can pull it again. I'll get the next one, Baron Harkonnen. I could just keep on doing this here, and you can see all these different orders come through. I can do a batch size of 10 here to get the rest of them pulled out. So there they all are. And of course, because I haven't acknowledged any of them, they're going to reappear in this stream shortly here. So if I do is receive again, we see Lady Jessica came back. I'm assuming Paul came back in this batch request up here because they're going to be redelivered in order. Yep, there's Paul right there. So we got Lady Jessica back. Now I can hack a message like this. And I'm not going to receive that again. Notice the messages tab has this little exclamation mark here. It's because Sequin's noting that it's starting to redeliver messages. So this was a production use case. I had a worker that was receiving messages and not acting them. That wouldn't be very good. So we have a lot more observability tooling that's coming in, but one of the things that we're obviously tracking is if a worker or a set of workers seems to be pulling messages, not acknowledging them, that's a sign they might be crashing or there's some sort of bug in the system there. So just one of the many different observability tools that we're continuing to work on and roll out here. So after a row has been acked, if any updates happen to that row, those will be redelivered to consumers right away. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's go ahead and just clear out the current messages there. And then we're gonna go make a change to Lady Jessica, which we already acknowledged. And we're just gonna add an exclamation point at the end. And if we grab a batch of messages there, you'll see Lady Jessica pops right through. So any updates or inserts that are happening to that table are going to appear right away at this consume endpoint. Sequin also offers webhook subscriptions if you'd prefer to have data pushed to you as opposed to pulling it. And both of them are very similar in terms of this consumer group pattern, this replay visibility, but of course, just push versus pull. So over here, click on the order sequence. And for this one, let's start at the end of the table. And we can go ahead and set up a new webhook.site endpoint for development purposes, create the consumer, and I'm going to go ahead and pull open this webhook.site, just a nice little webhook receiving site. You can see there's been no webhooks delivered yet. If I go into the database now and I add a new row, and gosh, I guess we already have Gurney in here, but my do knowledge is getting close to the end of the characters I'm familiar with. Go ahead and save that, come back to the dashboard. You can see that that one message was act, it was delivered. We can see it over here is acknowledged. And then if we hop over to webhook.site, we can see that the webhook is right here, sent to the webhook endpoint. And as you might expect, with the pull consumer, with this concept of redelivery, where um, messages will reappear at the endpoint, but with pushes, with webhook subscriptions, Sequin will retry a delivery by repushing the message, and it will do so with an exponential back off and all that good stuff to make sure you don't miss it. Okay, so we've seen how you can stream tables with Sequin. You can set up a sequence and you can connect a consume endpoint to that in order to pull inserts and updates or the latest version of rows, or you can set up a webhook subscription to receive rows via push. But sometimes you want to track discrete changes to rows in a table. You want to track every update and specifically what in the update changed. You want to track deletes. And so to do that, we just need a table that's a log of all those changes. Fortunately, Sequin ships with this feature called WAL Pipelines. And a WAL pipeline helps you capture changes that happen to any table in your database and put them into a log table so you can then easily stream that log table with Sequin. So I'll show you how that works. So to create our first WAL pipeline, I'll navigate to WAL Pipelines and hit click Create. And then for the source table, I'll select Products. And now Sequin is prompting for which operations we want to capture. We can do inserts, updates, or deletes, or all three. We'll just capture everything. You can also specify column filters and only capture changes for records that match the column filters if you want to capture everything. And then for the destination, you'll write to a Sequin events table. If you don't already have a table, you can click the Create Event Table button, and Sequin will show you how to create this table in your database for logging events or changes. And it's pretty easy to set up a retention policy as well. There's a couple good tools for that in Postgres or extensions. So if you're doing less than 1 million writes per day, PG cron, just doing a delete where committed at less than is totally fine. If you're doing more than that, you might want something more like PG partman, which is a very efficient way to do time-based partitioning. We already have our event table here, so we'll go ahead and just select that. You can see this event table in our database, and we'll call this products, so can't type, product Sequin events, and click create WAL pipeline. So now we can test this end to end or see if this is going to work for us here by making a change to this. We'll change the price to the Frem kit, and we'll go ahead and increase the price a little bit there on the products table. I'll save. If we go over to Sequin events and refresh, we'll see here that Sequin has captured the change to the products table, which was changing this to 649, and written that into the Sequin events table. And we can see here, I'll go ahead and move this over. We can see here the latest price is 649, and then changes contains all of the old versions of columns that changed. So the previous version or the previous value for price was 449. And of course, if you want to make the whole old row, all you have to do is merge this on top of this. So that gives us an events table with a full log of changes that have happened to any one of our source tables. And of course, that means that in Up Sequin, I can then go create a sequence off that events table. And then, of course, I can then stream that events table using consume endpoint, webhook subscriptions, what have you. So I hope you enjoyed this end-to-end look at Sequin. You saw how I connected my database to Sequin Cloud. I set up a sequence on my table. I was able to then stream inserts and updates, including historical rows from that table into a consume endpoint that kind of acts like an SQS endpoint. Or I could set up a webhook subscription to push those rows to an endpoint of my choosing. And finally, we saw WAL pipelines and how they let us capture discrete insert updates and deletes in a table into an events table, which we can then stream with Sequin. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, please hop into our Discord. We'd be happy to have you and happy to help you. Thank you so much.